I'm going to put them on in a moment. The aim of the show, listeners, is to introduce you to the spiritual knowledge in the light of truth, the Grail message by Abrushin. And
What is the grail message?
the Grail message is a spiritual knowledge of life based on natural laws. And we have a topic for tonight, as always, a new topic. And the topic for tonight is strengths and weaknesses. Hello, Brother Rainer, are you there? Brother Rainer, are you there? Okay, we're going to he's going to join us in a second, and hopefully Brother Gregory also. Let me get him on. There we go. Let's get him on. Brother Rainer, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Oh, welcome to the show. And I'm going to get Brother Gregory on as well. Are you there, Brother Gregory? Hello, Brother Gregory, are you there? I think he's going to join us in a second. The weather here today is mild. Oh, Brother Gregory, are you there now? Hello?
Hello.
Oh, welcome to the show.
Hello.
Brother. Welcome to the show. I'm just going to tell you the weather here in London today. It's been mild. The freezing weather from last week. In fact, we had snow after the last show. And it's all gone now. I'm glad to say it's now mild. It's actually, well, maybe it's not a good idea, but it's almost going to reach double figures, I think, very soon. So not quite winter as we expect, but it was cold last week. That was in London. Now I'm going to ask Brother Rainer, how was it in Germany last week and how's it today?
Well, in the last couple of days it's become much warmer, about plus 6 degrees centigrade, and that's well above freezing point. And yeah, well, that's it. Not very nice, in my opinion.
Okay.
As we have obviously a different point of view.
Yes.
As a German, we like it more cold.
Right.
And snow has memories of a very distant past. But nowadays we have this mishmash weather.
Yes. And Brother Gregory, how is it in Brussels? I assume you're in Brussels. Are you in Brussels?
It's not much different from what you have in Germany, because Germany is just a stone throw away from Brussels. So it's just a mishmash, getting warmer, but all of a sudden it gets cold again, then comes up again. So, and well, we still enjoy it anyway.
Yes.
Here in Brussels.
Good. I'm just going to let listeners know the show before us was by Sister Marino. She's a new DJ, if I can call her like that, and her show is about community. So she just started today, and she'll be back next Tuesday, 4 p.m. to 6 p.m., just to let you know, listeners. So that's another person you can listen to as well. And she plays community music from local people around London. So, yeah, do join her show as well next week. So, just to remind you, listeners, our show, the Spiritual Discussion Program, the aim is to introduce you to the spiritual knowledge in the light of truth, the Grail message by Abrushin. And the topic for discussion tonight is strengths and weaknesses. And you can join us with any questions or comments. The number to contact us here in UK, it is 079 444 313 66. You can call, text, or use WhatsApp. If you're outside of UK, it is 0044 79 444 313 66. So, as Brother Bless was asking me, what is the Grail message? So I'm going to read my regular introduction on the Grail message. The Grail message, in the light of truth, by Abrushin, is a spiritual knowledge of life. It offers an explanation of the world, a picture of creation on the basis of natural laws. Its lectures contain valuable basic elements as a help in life. For through the knowledge mediated, the reader is again brought closer to life and led back to God. The Grail message deals with important fundamental questions of life by explaining in a clear and logical way the automatic working of the laws of nature, the whole weaving of creation, allowing every process to be recognized and thereby the purpose of our whole life. It is directed at the individual and speaks to the innate experiences of the human being, their strengths and weaknesses. Thus, every reader has the opportunity to discover, through the intuitive perception, if what is stated is the truth. Combining with matter-of-fact reasoning, a complete world picture arises, where there is no separation between the visible world and the great world beyond the five senses, nor any separation between scientific and religious striving for knowledge. I'd like to give you a couple of quotes from the author of the Grail message, Abrushing. The hearer and reader of my lectures should always work within himself, keenly probing and building bridges from one lecture to the other, as well as out into the great and small world happenings. Only then will he be able to understand the Grail message and find that it gradually shapes itself into one complete whole, without leaving any gaps. Again and again, in all the happenings, the reader will come back to the basic features. He can explain everything without having to change even one single sentence. The word of the Grail message lives, so that it permits only those people who really carry the honest desire in their souls to find abundantly. All else is automatically rejected by it. For the arrogant and those who seek superficially, the message will remain the book with 7 seals. And I'd like to finish with one more quote from the author. I wish to fill the gaps which have so far always remained unanswered in the souls of men, and which never leave any serious thinker in peace if he earnestly seeks for the truth. So, dear listeners, the topic for tonight is strengths and weaknesses. And again, we will invite you to join us with any question or comments. The number to contact us here in UK, it is 079 444 313 66. And you can call, text, or use WhatsApp. If you're outside of UK, it is 004479 444 313 66. Again, you can call, text, use, or contact us on WhatsApp. Brother Gregory, I'd like to start with you today. As the topic is called strength and weaknesses, I would like to talk on strength, ask a question on strength first. So, this is from a listener, actually, this question. What they have said, what is strength, and is it to be judged by mankind's physical prowess, or are we speaking here of another far more precious inner spiritual strength? And if so, how can one recognize the difference? So they've given an example, yeah. Sorry, go ahead.
How can one recognize the difference between what and what?
Difference between the physical strength or prowess and inner spiritual strength.
First, it must be realized that in this forum, in this program, it is basically that of the spiritual. And therefore, the initial attempt will be to describe strength in terms of spiritual, on a spiritual framework. It is very clear that movement is basic in all of life. And since movement is always there, there's always intrinsic motion. It therefore means that for those that exist within this movement, which is perpetual, they must either have the capacity to adjust themselves accordingly, such that they are able to perceive or stand appropriately. movement as such, or motion, causes some form of pressure. That pressure, if one responds to it accordingly, one is able to stand, and one is then described as being strong. On the other hand, if one has not yet got the capacity to respond to this pressure, which is like a force, like is described physically, if one is unable or hasn't got that capacity to respond to this pressure, one is then called weak, because it has not yet learned to adjust itself to the pressure of events, the pressure of the happenings. This could be spiritual pressure, this could be ethereal pressure, sometimes these ones could be physical pressure, or in quote, pressure of work. Many times when one is under pressure in work and one does not know how to respond to it, one is being termed as being weak. It's unable to respond to the pressure. So strength, or lack of it, sometimes, which is called weakness or relative weakness, all depends on how one is able to respond to the pressure of radiation, of radiative forces within one's neighborhood. Those neighborhood could be spiritual neighborhood, or could be basically physical neighborhoods.
Thank you for that, Brother Gregory. I'm going to, the same listener has given an example, and I'd just like to explore that with you, Brother Gregory, a bit more. So the example they've given, if one stands and fights for the right to freedom from bondage, spiritually and earthly alike, so that's one person acts in that way, which is fighting for freedom, right for freedom from bondage, and spiritually and earthly alike, and another one walks away to fight another day. Who can say which is the stronger if both have acted out of a higher understanding? So perhaps, Brother Gregory, you could just say what you think about this statement, and then maybe expand on it.
Well, you said one sees that which is not right and responds to it. Another sees that which is not right and walks away. The difference must be clear. One may see what is not right and walks away because one may not have the inner capacity to deal with that at that particular moment. That means one realizes one's limitations, whereas another sees what is not right and senses the inner capacity to respond to this particular pressure and goes and deals with it. Seen from a higher point, you are judged based on your works, not the work you haven't done. Or will you be judged on that which you haven't done? Therefore, one will say, there's no need to start talking of judgment of this particular person or of that particular person. It is the inner man, it is the strength that he or she possesses that it uses. One cannot accuse a child who is not strong enough to go into a fight when the child realizes it's not strong enough to prosecute that fight. And it would be wrong to start comparing one particular person who walked away because he senses his impotency to another one who stands firmly, knowing fully well it has the inner capacity to deal with that particular situation.
Thank you for that, Brother Gregory. I'm going to move on to you now, Brother Rainer. I'm just thinking about how we can sort of look at these strengths, and because there's nobody like you could say is perfect in their strength, in every skill or ability, and so there's, like as Brother Gregory mentioned, if it's not a strength, it's like a weakness, but a weakness which we know can be turned into a strength, because you just have to know if you can handle something or you can't handle something, and so like the example that we spoke about just now, if you know you can't handle that, then you can walk away. You're not ready right now, and if you are, then of course you can have that fight, that you're up for that fight. So my question for you, Brother Rainer, would be, if we see we have a weakness somewhere, should we focus on that to make it strong, or should we just be patient and just use what we know we are strong at and just develop that, work on that alone? And yeah.
Okay, I think I would like to give another angle
Sure.
to the discussion here, and especially what concerns the strength and the weaknesses. Of course, people wonder, where am I good at? What is my real profession in life, and things like this. And I think they worry to a large degree unnecessarily. Or how do I overcome my weaknesses? So that's awful. Let us look at what really happens. We are here on Earth, and to get through the vicissitudes of life, we have a certain apparatus, our body with its intellect, and I don't know, legs to run and arms to move, and we can talk, we can think, and we can. So there are many things this instrument can do. And the question is not really to ask all the time, what kind of brain do I have? Are my genes really good? Look, I'm in a race which has 2 genes less than the other race, what concerns the brain or something, brain development. This is not the thing. The problematic thing, or the important thing, is how do I use my instrument? And I want to quote a few studies which have again and again shown IQ tests, or the way how you pass your SAT exams, that's the United States exam, have no importance, are not a predictor for future success. What is really a much better predictor is how can people work with their intelligences at their disposal? Do they have the perseverance? Can they engage in one task with positive thinking, with enthusiasm? And that really makes the thing. So I want to bring that back to a saying in the Bible, which I like personally very much, and I'm not, which we read in last time, or in one of our last sessions. It is that one which is found in Matthew, and it says, do not worry about the things of tomorrow. Tomorrow has its own worries. So care about the ones which are just right there now. And or the other one, which is line, a very beautiful saying, is, be like the lilies on the field. They do not worry about their raiment, about their clothes. And look, God provided for them. And are the raiments of flowers, are they not more beautiful than King Solomon's dresses? And indeed, a tulip is much more beautiful in the coloring, and a lily is much more beautiful in the coloring. So why does the Bible say us we should not stop worrying? We should because the worrying and having this no trust in one's own capability is incredibly undermining. It interferes with our it interferes when we use zum Beispiel use, for example, the intellect in an exam. If people worry, it has been shown a million of times in many studies, if people worry, that hinders them, that incapacitates them to such a degree that they almost all the time fare much worse than the other things. So all those things really should make one understand, how can I use the instruments of my body, my physical body I'm speaking now, how can I use them in a good way, so that I can surpass the other ones, even if I have a medium intellect. It's like two people have a computer. The one runs an older chip, and the one is a little bit faster, the other computer. They are not handicapped because of them, because much more important is how do you use the computer. The one on the cheap computer with the AMD chip, he can make wonderful programs the other guy cannot make because he doesn't know programming so well. So it's the way I use the instrument which is much more important. And this whole worrying about it's not for nothing that in the Bible there are those huge statements against worrying. Do not worry. Tomorrow has its own worries, and so I would like to read something, which is and from a person. It's the author which I've read already a few times. It's Daniel Goleman, the New York Times, a person in charge of neurology and psychology. And he writes about himself this time, about fear or about anxiety. And that is an extreme case. I must say I've never experienced such a thing, but it goes like this. Just once in my life have I been paralyzed by fear. The occasion was a calculus exam during my freshman year in college, for which I somehow had managed not to study. I still remember the room I marched to that spring morning with feelings of doom and foreboding heavy in my heart. I had been in that lecture hall for many classes. This morning, though, I noticed nothing through the windows and did not see the hall at all. My gaze shrank to the patch of the floor directly in front of me as I made my way to a seat near the door. As I opened the blue cover of my exam book, there was the thumb in my ears of heartbeat. There was the taste of anxiety in the pit of my stomach. I looked at the exam questions once, quickly. Hopeless. For an hour I stared at the page, my mind racing over the consequences I would suffer. The same thoughts repeated themselves over and over, a tape loop of fear and trembling. I sat motionless like an animal frozen in mid-move by curare. Curare is a poison the South American Indians use when hunting. They put it on an arrow and shoot the animal, and it immediately freezes because it goes on the nervous system. It's incredibly effective, that curare. So he sat motionless like an animal frozen in mid-move by curare. What strikes me most about that dreadful moment was how constricted my mind became. I did not spend the hour in a desperate attempt to patch together some semblance of answers to the test. I didn't daydream. I simply sat fixated on my terror, waiting for the ordeal to finish. Now, this shows the devastating influence, in this case really devastating, of fear and our feeling of doom and gloom, and I'm not going, and I'm missing my exam, and I'm being thrown out of the universities. And and with a probably bit more upbeat mood, and it's that basic mood which I'm up with, that is spiritual. The basic mood which underlies everything. That basic mood was not upbeat. He became depressed. And that is why in the Bible we find those sentences in Matthew about be like the lilies of the fields. Try to get this positive basic attitude. Then you will get through the vicissitudes of life much better. You are much freer. And the narrative of an ordeal by terror is my own. It's to say, it is to this day for me the most convincing evidence of the devastating impact of emotional distress on mental clarity. Mental clarity, that's my brain, that's the intellect. I now see that my ordeal was most likely a testament to the power of the emotional brain to overpower the thinking brain. And so he talks about the emotional brain. We know that the emotions, the moods, are seated in the spirit, or that's the presumption at least I have. Yeah, but there is something like an emotional plane which connects the spirit to the normal brain. But if you worry, then the thinking brain is hampered. That intellect, that's the tool I'm talking of. And the thinking brain might be better with some people, might be worse with some people. I, for example, have not a very good one, but I still use it with lots of joy to do some graphics programming and things. And that's the extent to which emotional upsets can interfere with mental life is no news to teachers. Students who are anxious, angry, or depressed don't learn. People who are caught in these states do not take in information efficiently or deal with it well. Powerful negative emotions twist attention toward their own preoccupations, interfering with the attempt to focus everywhere. Indeed, one of the signs that feelings have veered over the line into the pathological is that they are so intrusive they overwhelm all other thought, continually sabotaging attempts to pay attention to whatever other task is at hand. So that's the thing, we sabotage ourselves. So the main thing to use our instruments properly here on life is to get that basic mood state in order, which is our spirit. Once we do this, we can use our instruments, the intellectual brain, the intellect, much more creatively. And this was just the extreme thing, how the train of thoughts races in circles around. And this is with all people driven by anxiety. They are paralyzed because they start worrying, and the worrying goes on in circles and circles and circles. And you don't get out of it. And it is the 100% indicator for failure. There you will fail. So what I will say is, what we have to do here, if we want to talk about strengths and weaknesses, we should not worry so much what our strengths are, but we should learn how to use those faculties in an efficient way. And the efficient way is to have a spirit which is free of worries. I just read another foul mood, anxiety again. It's about another patient. She said, I worry about my son. He just started playing on the varsity football team, so he's bound to get an injury sometime. It's so nerve-wracking to watch him play that I've stopped going to his games. I'm sure my son must be disappointed that I'm not watching him play, but it's simply too much for me to take. So she doesn't go to her son's football games anymore because she's worried that he's going to injure him sometime. And so she's just in this trap of worrying, and that is where we have to get out, and where the Bible gives a very good sentences, very easily to understood sentences, how to get out and become clear in spirit again. And that the spirit really can dominate things. And using the and Abdushin really describes the mechanisms behind it. For example, that using the intellect for specific task and tie the intellect to the task, that is bound will, not free will, bound will, because the spirit really says, now I'm using that instrument for that specific task. And I don't want to be distracted. And to do it efficiently, you have to have a healthy spirit. And if you want, so that notion you've probably never heard, the bound will and the free will, is really the bound will is when I use my instruments and for a specific task, and science has really quite clearly shown how this is done. That bound, that goal orientation to get through a earthly task, it's in the forebrain, of course, which we know from the Grail message. And if you read some books about neurology, you know this working memory that is, and with that working memory and setting your aims for something, a gross material thing. Now I cannot be subtracted. I have quickly to go over to building C, room 222, and I have to use the escalator 4. To do that efficiently, I must not be distracted from that task. And so my free will is bound, and my free will is bound by that submaterial task. I hope that becomes a little clear. It's a very difficult, it's a concept which humanity has not heard yet, the bound will. But it helps a lot, and it becomes clearer in something I want to read later on. But I think the important thing is we have to really concentrate here on life, on our spirit, and not be terrorized by my IQ is a little bit down here and it's a little bit up here. That is no predictor for success. I think I will read later. I hope that has become clear, so I pass it back to you.
Yes, thank you,
Brother Saad.
Thank you so much, Brother Rainer. I'm going to ask Brother Gregory to sort of go into more about the spirit and how the spirit works and how the intellect works, which is, if you can, Brother Gregory, sort of almost define, what is the spirit, what its abilities are, and how it works, how we work on the earth, because we are on the earth, and the intellect that is on the earth, we use on the earth. If you can just first tell us more on that. Yes, and then I have a follow-up question after that.
Well, the word spirit, when it's used, sometimes looks elusive. However, if the word energy is used, that one is commonplace and many people seem to understand. So basically, one will say energy is spirit, but not the one which is, we use equations to write, to write in equations or measure the way we say it. Basically, we know that we have the physical body. We can see a physical body, which is that's of ourselves. And we know that the physical body is controlled by some form of tool or whatever one cares to call it. That which controls the physical body or sets it in motion must be independent of the physical body. Basically, the inner core of man is referred to as the spirit. The spirit has its origin from a particular realm, which is referred to as the spiritual realm. And what we have here in the world of matter, or in the physical world, is a precipitation of energy. energy which has coagulated or has precipitated or has cooled down. So we have that whenever we have a cooling down of energy, we have that which is dense. But the inner core that stirs that which is dense is of spirit. This spirit is granted the opportunity to experience, and that is referred to as the human spirit. In order to experience, it needs to be able to get into motion, to move from one place to the other. And in order to experience, it needs to take on the cloaks such that it's able to make itself known to a particular environment. That being the case, it takes on different cloaks from its origin, and when it gets to the earth, it now takes on the physical body, which we now see. In the physical body, as it matures, we now have the so-called seats of the intellect. That is another capabilities of the physical body that it uses to do some work here on earth. The spirit is connected to the physical body through body radiations. The vibrations of the spirit, which are much finer, is linked to that of the physical body. When an impression springs from the spirit, it passes through the back brain and then comes to the frontal brain, and then is interpreted to make it earthly or make it more understandable, and either speech or movement or some form of motion is carried out. So that is only a sketch of what the spirit is and how it connects to the physical body. More can be found in the work In the Light of Truth, which reveals everything that there is to know.
Thank you for that, Brother Gregory. Dear listeners, you're listening to Bless Radio. It's the Tuesday night spiritual discussion program. The aim of the show is to introduce you to the spiritual knowledge in the light of truth, the Grail message by Abdushin. And the topic for discussion tonight is strengths and weaknesses. You can join us in the discussion by contacting us on this UK number, which is 079 444 31366. You can call, text, or use WhatsApp. If you're outside of the UK, it is 0044 79 444 31366. I want to go to you now, Brother Rainer.
Brother Saad.
Oh, you want to say something? Go on. Yeah.
Yes, I can continue where I left off, and it's a very good thing I want to read out again, because that really makes clear the relation between our spirit, where the emotions, the intuitions are, seat of the emotions, and impulses. It's impulse control. Now, it's a very famous study test, and it's so famous you might have very likely heard of it, but it is so good because it went over decades, and it really shows that IQ and is really a very poor predictor of future success. But some other things like perseverance or willpower is a wonderful is a much better, it's an incredible good predictor of success. And using your skills like this, that you will be successful. And that is really what we want to do. Not listening to what our strengths are, but using the skills we have, and to a degree that we go successfully through life. And how important a free will is. Now I'm speaking about the free will, and that can be so overgrown that persons actually have no free will anymore. And I noticed that quite recently. I was in a group traveling, and there were women, and I saw their weaknesses. Some were smoking and some were doing this. There was one woman I discovered very soon. She couldn't pass by a shop, a bakery shop with sweets in it. And she had to go into everyone wherever we walked. And I said, look, I bet she's going into that shop. I told my wife. And 100%, she couldn't resist the impulse to buy something sweet. She was too weak to do it. She had to go inside. And in a way, she became predictable. And a free willpower would say, no, I do not give in to that impulse. And we have to look at the nature of an impulse. What kind of impulse is that? And if you walk by that bakery shop, of course, you see the bakery shop, that's the trigger. Then you think, oh, chocolate, sweet things, croissants, and that's what I want. And that triggers a surge of physical desire, a craving for sweet things. And that craving for sweet things is stronger than her free will. She had to go inside. And that's, of course, again, a new mechanism. What is controlling those impulses? And it is the free will. And I must guard my free will. I cannot become the plaything of bakery shops I just happen to pass by. And there are many weaknesses, like sexuality, where I cannot resist, and all the crimes, what happens to it, and with the eating disorders, and all those things, they're all the result of that simple thing. The will is too weak to exercise self-restraint, to control those impulses, which always come from the physical. It's something physical when we want sexual intercourse. It's something physical when we crave for a sweet croissant, a chocolate-filled croissant or something. It's physical, and it's the physical then which controls the spiritual. And I like to introduce this way of thinking, and it's sorely missing today for some reason. But now I'm telling you about the very similar thing about this study of school children, which have been watched then over decades through their later year, how successful they were. And probably you might well know it, it's called the marshmallow test, which the papers reported at the time. Impulse control, the marshmallow test. Just imagine you're 4 years old and someone makes the following proposal. If you will wait until after he runs an errand, you can have 2 marshmallows for a treat. If you cannot wait until then, you can have only 1, but you can have it right now. It's a challenge sure to try the soul of any 4-year-old, a microcosm of the eternal battle between impulse and restraint, desire and self-control, gratification and delay. Which of these choices a child makes is a telling test. It offers a quick reading, not just of character, but of the trajectory that child will probably take through life. So the children, if they wanted to gratify their impulse right away, they could eat them right away, but they were only allowed 1 marshmallow. If they waited, a person was going out of the room on an errand, waited till that person came back, perhaps 5 minutes later, they had to control themselves. But then when he came back, they could have a treat. They could have 2 marshmallows. So let's see what happens and what happened later in life. There's perhaps no psychological skill more fundamental than resisting impulse. It's the root of all emotional self-control, since all emotions I have to be a little bit clear, since all emotions by their very nature lead to one or another impulse to act. We must say there are impulses to act, and I before said the impulse to act comes out of the physical. It's a physical desire. So I don't like that he used the word emotions, which is reserved in my world of how I use the notions. Emotions are things like sadness, and that is not the craving for some sweet thing. So the root meaning of the word emotion, I leave that out. The capacity to resist that impulse to act, most likely, I leave that all out. At any rate, a remarkable study in which the marshmallow challenge was posed to 4-year-olds shows just how fundamental is the ability to restrain and delay impulse. The study tracked down the 4-year-olds as they were graduating from high school. So it tracked those 4-year-olds. Some 4-year-olds were able to wait what must surely have seemed an endless 15 to 20 minutes for the experimenter to return. So they had to control the impulse for 15 to 20 minutes. Okay, that's for a 4-year-old, it must be quite some ordeal. To sustain themselves in their struggle, they covered their eyes so they wouldn't have to stare at temptation, or rested their heads in their arms, talked to themselves, sang, played games with their hands and feet, and even tried to go to sleep. These plucky preschoolers got the 2 marshmallow reward. But others, more impulsive, grabbed the 1 marshmallow, almost always within seconds of the experimenter's leaving the room on his errand. The diagnostic power of how this moment of impulse was handled became clear some 12 or 14 years later, when these same children were tracked down as adolescents. The emotional and social difference between the grab the marshmallow preschoolers and their gratification delaying peers was dramatic. Those who had resisted temptation at 4 were now, as adolescents, more socially competent, personally effective, self-assertive, and better able to cope with the frustrations of life. They were less likely to go to pieces, freeze, or regress under stress, or become rattled and disorganized when pressured. They embraced challenges and pursued them instead of giving up even in the face of difficulties. They were self-reliant and confident, trustworthy and dependable. And they took initiative and plunged into projects. And more than a decade later, they were still able to delay gratification in pursuit of their goals. The third or so who grabbed for the marshmallow, however, tended to have fewer of these qualities and shared instead a relatively more troubled psychological portrait. In adolescence, they were more likely to be seen as shying away from social contacts, to be stubborn and indecisive, to be easily upset by frustrations, to think of themselves as bad or unworthy, to regress and become immobilized by stress, to be mistrustful and resentful about not getting enough, to be prone to jealousy and envy, to overact to irritations with a sharp temper, so provoking arguments and fights. And after all those years, they still were unable to put off gratification. What shows up in a small way early in life blossoms into, wow, okay, I leave that. So they were, I'm not reading on, but also later on as students, those ones who had the power to control their impulses, to restrain their impulses, which are bodily desires, bodily cravings, they were in the whole range of spectrum the more successful persons with less weaknesses. And it's very interesting to read about, very interesting to look also and think about those who could not resist temptation, who could not control their desires, they thought they're much more likely to think themselves as bad or unworthy, and to be mistrustful and resentful about not getting enough. And this feeling bad or unworthy, mistrustful and resentful is some qualities we have nowadays, and these are the qualities, in my opinion, which really are behind the cry for social justice and for revolution. These are people who are really not able to control their desires, and then they want social change and they want revolution because they are not able to really change themselves and control themselves, and the very low desires which life always offers, the temptations. And that's because at the beginning I thought that was completely mistaken from a spiritual point of view, to say the one who fights for social justice. Nowadays, in modern thinking, he is regarded as the hero. But I would say we have to look deeper than that. And I think let us first check, where does his mistrust and his resent against the ruling classes come from? And where does his decreased self-esteem and feeling of unworthiness comes from? And I think it has its roots much more in a weak spirit than in social injustices he finds himself in the environment. So, so what we have to keep in mind here is we are all the time exposed to temptations. And if I want to remain, and those temptations, I become so weak. And those temptations, of course, they must always have a trigger. You must always see something that must jump into mind. And temptations always work with something to put a thought into your mind. That's in the cinema, when you walk and there comes some chocolate ice cream advertisement. It's then you see that woman taking that sweet chocolate ice cream. That puts the thought into your mind, that hooks you. And without that thought, you would not have temptation if that advertisement was not there. You might just pass by that temptation because you are not aware of it. But that is how the people who use temptation, how they work, that's their ploy. Bring them to the thought. It's the same thing with pornography. It is just get something hooked on a pornographic thought. And then you've got the person, because that desire is so strong we are actually it's one of an epidemic disease, the sexual drive in how it exists today, to that extent. But there must be always awakening the thought first. The thought is in the intellect, and then comes the desires, and then the spirit either is strong enough to control and say no, or you give in. And Abdurrahim then declares the mechanisms much finer, because once that thought is being engendered in you, you are automatically connected to thought centers which flood you and which trigger even more that craving or burning desire for chocolate or whatever. So there's a whole, that's how Abdurrahim explains creation. I cannot go into that in too much detail, but we have something now to explain it. And those children, when they try to resist the temptation, they were very good. They tried to think of something else and or try to get to sleep, get that thought away. That was what many of the children tried to do, and play with something else meanwhile. And hopefully that playing with something else takes my mind from that vicious, from that temptation. And what our aim is here is what we have to get to, and that is the real revolution.
Thank you so much.
Put the spirit onto the first place, make it the ruling thing, and make it so strong that it can rule. Right now we have a spirit which is not able anymore to rule and to decide and to resist temptation. So I pass it back to you. But I hope this thing now becomes clear, and how we are, how it makes the word weakness a much more tangible thing now. That's what we know from life, and we do not think so abstractly about it. And a weakness would be something I cave into the craving for some chocolate. That's a weakness. Okay, now I pass it back.
Yes, thank you so much, Brother Rani. You really illustrated with that sort of research, you know, what is the strengths and what is weakness, or how we are supposed to use our ability in, you know, fighting temptation, you could say there. You know, you're really clear that this is a decision, and you also mentioned about that it is a earthly craving, desire of something physical, you know, not the spirit doesn't need those things, but the body somehow craves for those things, sweets, whatever it is, sexual desire. There's something there, and yet it should be the spirit that is in charge and making the decision, and not cave in to those physical desires. So thank you for illustrating that. And so I want to go to now to Brother Gregory. Brother Rainer mentioned about temptation there, and you know, we can't avoid the temptation; it's always there. So what I want to ask you there is it simply that we just resolve to fight the temptation, or is there some aid that can help us? You know, there's like some psychic people go to psychics, or some sort of, let's say, other ways. I don't want to go into all the names, you know, like meditation, whatever it is. Like other people do all these different things to turn into some, you know, to try to even Brother Rainer said something else actually, which I would like to also explore with you, Brother Gregory. Is it something individual that you fight these things, temptation by yourself, or should it be that you need some group, people coming together, you know, to support? Because you hear like Alcoholics Anonymous or whatever Anonymous, there's so many of them, you know, the people come together, they have some, let's say, weaknesses or temptations that they're tempted into, and they don't seem to have the strength themselves to fight. So is it an individual fight? Can somebody fight it by individually, or it has to be a group fight? And also, should there be some aid? I'm going to use the word external aid, so not outside of yourself, that can help to fight this temptation.
Well, that expression, temptation. A temptation is an activity that tends to lead one away from that which is upbuilding. It's more of a distraction. So one has to decide what that distraction is, like they mentioned in the case of ice cream or some form of desire. As long as one is able to differentiate a temptation from that which is upbuilding, then it becomes like a filter. So you need not worry about what the temptation is, because you can already identify it and move forward. You mentioned is it a personal or a group or external aid? It's a combination of all sorts, depending on the scenario and the situation. So you might find that in some cases, due to one's observation of oneself or through experience, one has come to differentiate that which is of value and that which is only just mere entertainment as distraction or just a spectacle. That which is of value spiritually leads the spirit upwards, and it becomes free from unnecessary stress which temptations might bring along. So in one case, the individual has to make a personal decision. In some cases where the individual is not strong enough, just like you have someone who is unwell, you go to a doctor and the doctor is able to help in his observation through his own specific area of study to assist. So you may have people coming together to discuss how to overcome some of these challenges. Because in that group, you might have had people who have gone through this form of challenges before and have been able to come out of it unscathed. Again, a third group could be some form of some other people who are external, who are also able to help. But the key thing here is the individual decision. It is the individual who has to make a decision. It is the individual who has to say, this is of upbuilding to me personally, and this one is not. For even if he goes to a group and is unable to make that decision, then it's no use. It's a complete waste of time. So the battle is personal. Just like the battle that comes from being an unconscious spirit germ, being unaware, and to the step of becoming self-conscious. The more self-conscious a person is, the humbler the person is, and the more determined that person becomes in its wish to attain to the noblest that it can attain. The more it will move away from distractions.
Thank you for that, Brother Gregory. I know somebody who used to smoke, and I think it's about the age of 40. He's a friend of mine, actually, and he smoked regularly, I should say, until the age of 40. And then he just decided that one day, I'm going to stop smoking today, and for, let's say, health reasons. And then he didn't touch a cigarette again, from that day onwards till now. He's like, and he just made that decision, just like you said, he just chose that this is how I want to be now. And so, people, you think, oh, people are addicted to this, and you need to try, it'll take you some time to wean yourself off something, maybe just reduce the amount of cigarettes per day or something, whatever it is. But he just made a decision on one day that today after today I'm going to take it again. And since that moment he's not touched it. So it's quite a story in a way, but I think it proves what you've just said. It's, you just make that decision, and it has to be something noble, and you can see how powerful it is. That something called addiction can be overcome in quotes so easily. Did you want to come back on that at all, Brother Gregory?
Well, I think you have said some very key things in these matters.
Oh. Just, we got a listener calling, so I'm just going to take the call. Hello, listener? Oh, okay. Okay, I see. Okay. My colleagues, Brothers Ryan and Gregory, I've just been told that we're not on air. So I don't know if people have been listening or not, but
yeah,
I
sent messages to that effect.
Okay. Okay.
But I'm not quite sure you were able to read it, and I tried to call too.
Okay. Thank you for letting us know. I'm going to talk to somebody to sort that out. In the meantime, I'm going to carry on. Brother Rainer.
Just for curiosity, for how long have you not been on air?
It looks like since the beginning. But,
since the beginning?
Yes, I'm a bit taken aback by that. Okay.
I mean that...
Let me just... okay.
We sent messages across.
Right.
Because I was informed. I wasn't there at
okay.
but I didn't want to distract too much.
Okay. All right. I'm going to resolve that in a moment because I have to talk to somebody for that. So, Brother Rainer, if we'll just carry on for now.
Well, but we are not on air, are we?
Let me just, because I need to check
We're,
this.
we're not on air, I mean physically on air, but we're the internet.
Only the internet.
Hmm.
Okay. Okay, just 1 second. I'll get someone. Just hold on.
But the internet radio is working.
That's what
I,
I'm not clear about that, so I'm going to check that. Just let me try to
I
play
was listening to
some
well,
music.
I think the internet, yeah, I mean, she tries to balance everything.
Right. Okay. Okay, just hold on a moment. I'm going to try and do something. Leon. Leon. We're just testing it now just to make sure the system's working. Okay, what I'm going to do, we're going to continue and keep checking it, and I will.
Oh no, I'm not going to continue
You
it.
don't want to? Okay.
I mean, those things we talk
Yeah.
are of the highest importance for
Yes.
humanity. Talk about a work which is of uttermost impurity, which I do not use just to fill in time.
Yes. Well, I know we are broadcasting on.
As a gap.
I know that we are on different sort of websites. So we are the Bless Radio website. We also have YouTube Live, which is later to be is being recorded, and so it should be broadcasting. But at this moment, I can't be 100% sure about what is not working exactly. So at the moment, okay, we'll just keep checking the rest of it in a moment. I'll try and play some music in the meantime.
Yeah, I think that's a better idea.
Okay, let me do that. Okay, I'm gonna carry on talking a little bit while we are checking these things. So, dear listeners, you're listening to Bless Radio. It's the Tuesday night spiritual discussion program. The aim of the show is to introduce you to the spiritual knowledge in the light of truth, the Grail message by Abdushin. The topic we are discussing tonight is strengths and weaknesses. You can join us with any questions or comments. The number to contact us is 079 079 444 313 66. You can call, text, or use WhatsApp. And if you're outside of UK, it is 0044 79 444 313 66. And okay, we've tested everything. It looks like it's all working. Right. So I'll wait if anybody has any further news. So, yeah, okay. But the Rhino, we tested it now. It looks like everything's working. Are you there? I think it's, yeah. I'm willing to talk. Yeah. Okay. Brother Rainer, are you there? Can you hear me? Hello?
Yeah, I'm just checking the internet radio.
Yeah.
What is it? Bless FM 1 or Bless 1
No,
or something?
blessradio.org.
Just one word.
Yes, one word, blessradio.org. Yeah, yeah.
I've asked my wife to check.
Yeah.
We'll come back.
Okay.
No, this is Bless Radio does not work. Not in TuneIn Radio.
Don't do tune in. Go to just the website. Go to the
Well,
website.
no. What's what's in TuneIn? What is it called there? There's the other Bless FM,
Yeah.
which run advertisements, which has the same logo as our Bless FM.
Yeah. Go to the. Okay. Do this check first. Check blessradio.org. Do that one.
Well, this is that's a website, isn't it?
Yes. Yes. What I meant.
I want to watch it via TuneIn. So what's there?
Okay. On tunein.com, look for Bless FM. Just one word, Bless FM.
Bless FM.
Yeah.
Here it is. Bless FM UK.
Yeah. That's the one. That doesn't sound like us.
Yeah, it gives German advertisements.
Right. Okay. But on the blessradio.org, we should be definitely there. And we live stream on YouTube, so that's another thing that people can listen on. Yeah. Okay, you got to close the ad on TuneIn, and then you'll hear us.
Yeah, I see it. I think it's coming now.
Yeah, yeah. So we're working. We are fine.
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay, good. Yeah, but we are being recorded, so let's continue with the show. All right?
It's streaming.
Yes.
And it's been hard.
Yeah, but it's streaming with a time delay.
Yeah.
I'm hearing.
There's always been a time delay.
That's right. All right. That's how it works. That's how it works. Let's carry on.
A huge time delay.
Yeah. Yeah. I would say
about
yeah.
5 minutes delay.
Yeah. But let's carry on, Rainer. Okay. So I just want to go on something that has in the news recently. You might not be aware of it, Rainer, but there's this basically a taxi driver who was convicted of raping, and he was jailed. And then he came to a parole, and he wanted the parole, and went forward to the parole board, and they approved his early release, but the victims were not happy with that he was, basically they felt he had not, he was not remorseful at all for what he had done, and they didn't feel right that the parole board should allow that release. And so they basically went to, I won't go into all the ins and out of it, but obviously they were quite unhappy of this person being released, and they made quite a big noise of it. And although they're not directly allowed to interfere, they made a complaint, and eventually it was overturned, and his release was stopped. His early release was stopped. But what the point I wanted to make on that was that, when there is somebody who commits a violent crime, especially somebody male or against a woman, a victim, and they have to go to court to convict that person, for the woman to face this male perpetrator is quite a tough thing. It feels like they have to relive what happened, and it's emotionally quite hard. It's just very hurtful for them, painful for them to come to court and sort of face that thing. So, talking again about strengths and weaknesses in this situation, how can, to have your justice, as in this case a woman, who's been raped, and she wants to, get the man who did it, behind bars to in the court case, how can they emotionally sort of handle that? Because it's of that so much, the pain is so great and the damage is so great for them. Is there, because they so feel hurt with what has happened, how can they face that? Is there a way to prepare yourself to handle this?
Well, what the sort of crimes we are experiencing today, they can be of such a sort that the victims are so shaken and especially at the extreme rate, that it's very hard to see how they can suffer, how they can restore from that emotional trauma, and actually I fear a book about extreme traumas, about a Holocaust survivor, which I haven't read, but my wife brought me all along to read, and she succeeded in forgiving and even have a successful life after that. And let me think of another case. Recently I saw a film of the Yazidis. The Yazidis, they are about 500,000 people, 500, and live in Iraq, somewhere in the North Iraq, I don't remember, a little bit up on the hills with their villages. And the IS, as true fundamentalists, did exactly what the Quran says and the Muslim Creed. They officially declared the annihilation, the elimination of the Yazidi people. And they killed 10,000s. It's not very much known here of those people. But they also did the men, they killed mainly the men. The women, they put into thousands into turned into sex slaves, which is allowed according to the hadith. And they were exposed to unspeakable terror, and I do not want to mention it, but the breasts were cut off and things like this. It's just beyond anything. And I think hopefully that people come to the conclusion to look at the fruit, if the fruit is bitter, the tree is bad. That's also in Matthew, to make that connection. If that tree, Islam, creates such things, then one has to really examine the tree, but objectively and with severity. Now, there was a film made by a wonderful director, I must say, and she just showed that when one of the girls, or that girl here, managed to escape. She was 21 years old, and she was made a special ambassador for human rights in the UN. She's now the special ambassador, and really this is what the film is about. And people were actually in tears. But the film is really great. You see that girl walking there, and you can see she's in another world. Our value judgments and our notions, they are irrelevant once you have been there. She looked like through a looking glass into our world, and what the Canadian Prime Minister said, and a very wonderful film. It just shows that girl, and the people around her were prodding her. Why don't you tell what they have done? What they've done, how they have raped you. And she said, well, no one will understand. It's no use telling it. And she didn't. It's no use telling it. It is so horrific. It is beyond anything. And it's this state of shakenness which will wake us up and will break and makes our spirit again. Once I think that you really could see how that, when that girl watched the political discussions or things, how meaningless the whole world was there. She was then still a very good ambassador for those Yazidi people. They live now in Greece, I think 500,000 of them. Oh, I don't know exactly. I think they showed at least a camp in the film in Greece. Recently they showed a camp in the other film. Okay, I'm mixing it up, but it's the Yazidi people, 500,000 of them. Look at the film. It's on YouTube, and she's written a book, and it's a wonderful film. And there's also the wife of the actor Clooney, who tried to accuse the IS. A very famous lawyer, very good looking, living in London. And so we have those things, and it's really a question, how do we deal with those traumatic things? And I think for those people who are immune to the terror, who can turn to something else and not wake up to that terror, and also don't have the empathy to feel with such a girl and say, which has gone through a rape ordeal, well, I must say that people who lack that empathy do not deserve the name human being. And I think at the moment we are in a state where most of humanity has lost, does not deserve anymore the name human being. I would say so. I mean, it's my personal opinion. You might have a different opinion. But seeing the apathy and with which those things are swept under the carpet, or are little, and one should be up in arms. Now the problem is there's so much crime, one cannot pull tens of thousands of IS fighters into prison. That's simply impossible. We have to try a way, and it's also not enforcing the laws. If there is a law against something, it's already a sign that there is an illness in society. We have to get rid of the illness, and that's a spiritual task. And then those laws will not be necessary. And through enforcing laws, you cannot get the better of those illnesses. What we need is a spiritual renewal, and that's what we have to work in. Of course, we go then, and perhaps, yes, in this particular case you mentioned of that woman having gone through an ordeal via that taxi driver. I mean, the arguments are all there. It would be much better that such taxi drivers do not exist anymore, and that one works on that. And for that, I think we need a spiritual awakening. And then comes, as a follow-up, the respect for another human being, for a woman. And you wouldn't do force anymore to a human being, because you realize the other human being has a free will. And I cannot injure the other human being. I cannot coerce the other human being to do something. And and that's what he did, the rapist. He coerced that woman, or rape is by force doing something another person rejects or does not want to do. We must get to those very simple sentences which are in the Bible and which are in the Grail message. Love thy neighbor as thyself. That doesn't stop before a woman. That doesn't make a woman a second-grade human being, as it is done in some religions. But once those things are alive, then those crimes will stop eventually. So I say yes. I'm not giving advice what they should do for that particular case. Judging anyway is impossible. The judgment, in my opinion, is always in the hands of God's will. God's will judge. And the ISIS people are as well judged as that taxi driver, and exactly in a just way. That kind of justice is beyond human justice, what we can achieve. And what, in my opinion, prisons can do is lock away those malefactors who are harmful, are wolves in human society. And unfortunately, there are so many that our prisons are full. And on a worldwide basis, there's gone so much. I think I think at the moment we cannot, in my opinion, my personal opinion, I think is we cannot do a lot. The only thing we can do is be shaken by those events and say what we must do is become better human beings which respect another human being and does not harm the human being. That simple principle. You can enjoy whatever you like, but in your enjoyment and wanderings through creation, you are not allowed to harm the human being. That is what we should talk about. But unfortunately, humanity, the majority of humanity, does not talk about such things. And I think that's the only way out. Start talking about those things and we need a spiritual renewal. We need to awaken the spirit that through its emotions. Because if you are emotionally alive, you never could do that. Only a fanatic can rape. I mean, in that case, she said, they said, what did you do? They said, at the same time, my sisters, 6 years old, were raped too. You cannot do anything, and it's so horrendous, but I hope that people, all those perpetrators, one day will wake up to what they have done. And it is only the fanatical belief in things which makes such things, obviously. And of course, the fanatical belief is the same thing, in my opinion, as being only intellectual, having a spirit which is sleeping, which does not warn himself, because you see only your fanatic sentences and rules which are written down, and you will always see those sentences which lead to fanatism. They are not spiritual. They are always very simple rules regarding earthly organization. And today we look only at earthly organization. There's in the Quran, it says earthly organization, okay, regard your woman as a fertile thing and go to her whenever you like. This is not a spiritual thing. That is just a saying, a completely an organizational thing, saying of those gross material acts, of those actions, this action is allowed. The other action is not allowed. And religions have impoverished just to allowed actions and not allowed actions. And those actions have nothing to do with spiritual insight and spiritual awareness. It's just political. In fact, it's a political religion, Islam, and to a large extent. And when we think all the time about politics, it is the wrong way. Again, in this program at the start, I heard all the time people were talking about, oh, political uprising, fighting for justice and fighting for this and the other. It's not that. That is not how you solve the thing. It's just political action has brought us into the mess because we do not recognize anything else but the intellect, and the intellect can just organize gross material things. You can do that. You are not allowed to do that. When you bring a woman to the court, she must face the perpetrator in live, or she can do it in video. These are all regulations. Those regulations, of course, if they are done on a sound spiritual basis, would be good regulations. And often they are done, and I think the lawmakers have thought a lot about this. But the problem is to come back to the spiritual and only the spiritual, and go away and see that political action, forbidding, classifying the action that is legal, that is not legal, is the wrong way. As in a society where spirituality spirituality is alive and where human beings listen to their spirits, such crimes would not occur because they simply could not do it. Their spirit would rebel against it. And so that such crimes occur already shows that the spirit is dead, is covered and enslaved into a canon of dogmas which says this is right and that is wrong. And our laws are also, they are also saying this is right and it is wrong, but it is the wrong way. We must get to the core again of the things. And for everyone it is to see, if people would not steal, we would have no locks. We do not need security. We wouldn't need cameras and all the thing, and we wouldn't need laws against thieves, because they simply do not take something from another human person, because alive, the spirit tells them so, and the law would diminish, which is today blown out of all proportions. So that's how I think about it. That's a personal opinion, of course.
Thank you, Brother Ryan. I mean, you've really, how can I say, very clearly and shown the real horror of what this, these crimes. I don't know what word really to use, because even that doesn't sound strong enough, because they say crimes against humanity. I mean, that's how the human beings label these things. But when you describe what it is, it's so horrific. You don't want to imagine what it can be like. So,
Mr. Farouk, just a little extension.
Sure.
They mentioned the Yazidis.
Yes.
But there's also Yemenis there, and you see pictures of children, starvation, and when you ask yourself, is this necessary? The answer is no. But because of people's personal pride, many other human spirits has to be starved. They have to be enslaved. Only a slave within will strive to enslave others. For the human spirit who is free deep within in spirit will never, ever contemplate enslaving another, because it will be impossible for it to do so. And like Brother Rainer said, they must be dead spiritually. And one can now imagine the sort of environment which these people have built through their activities. They have revealed what they are capable of, and they have enslaved themselves on the long run. Because you can imagine many a girl who wishes to go to school is plucked away from school because they don't like their fellow human spirits who are female to get some education for one reason or the other. So through our activities, we reveal our inner content and make it very clear before any discerning person. But as is well known, there are other beings that weave our faith, for we provide the materials for them to weave our faith in such a way that when we now depart this earth, depending on the sort of materials we have provided them through our activities, they will weave that environment for us through which we must purify ourselves. And very sadly, if one is unable to purify oneself before the allotted time that is granted the human spirit, then such a personality loses the opportunity for self-improvement and falls short of that which should return back to paradise as a self-conscious human spirit. Such a personality then goes through spiritual disintegration, and such a personality is erased from the book of life.
Thank you, Brother Gregory, for sort of adding to let's say build that picture, of the consequences of all these, how can I say, terrible and horrific actions. Because obviously there has to be justice in life. You can't just keep getting away with whatever anybody, bad things you do or evil things that you do. And one thing I wanted to say is, sort of an example you've given before, Brother Gregory. God gives oxygen to everybody, the sinner and the non-sinner, if I can put it in that way. So everybody's got a free will to act out and use their free will. So that cannot be taken away from us. But then there are the consequences which you have mentioned, good or bad, according to what we've done. So that one we shouldn't fear, that there will not be a consequence to all these terrible, it seems as that people can just outwardly they get away with it, what they're doing, but that's just only because of the time. You're looking at a particular fixed time frame, and that's just not the time frame how God's justice works, that we think this is how God's justice works. It just works according to when the justice will arrive for that person. So
may I
add go ahead.
One little thing?
Yes.
It must be stressed that neither religion, whether Christianity or whatever, or Muslim or Islamic or Buddhist, all these religions do not offer a place in heaven. They don't have the authority to offer a place in heaven. However, a place in heaven is only offered through one's activities. Many a person, through their activities, if it has been for the betterment of fellow mankind, such a personality will receive further support, for that is in accordance with the will of the Almighty, that has made preparation in such a way that human spirits in the world of matter are to help themselves, support one another, like neighbors. If, however, you have a situation where they have violated all the laws of nature, through that they are unable to assign a place for themselves, or they are unable to be lifted up higher towards the origin from whence they had set out initially. Therefore, it should not be thought of that religion offers, or the leaders of religion offers, a seat in heaven. But man, through their intrinsic abilities, through one's intuition, through one's deed, these deeds form the cornerstone, form the paths through which they purify themselves, and if they have the inner strength which they have drawn from the power that streams through creation, are able to get back home happily. Otherwise, they themselves will have to perish, even if they were in charge of religious organization or of industrial organization, and what they had thought or what they had planned were meant for others. For whatever they have then sown, they themselves will have to reap in abundance. If it is joy they had sown along the line, then through the grateful happiness of many who have received from such joys, such we stream towards them. If, however, they had inflicted untold suffering, then the result will be that they have woven a path for themselves of intense suffering until they themselves awake from such and change internally and hopefully be able to move on. But as long as there is no change in the state of the human spirit, then progress becomes impossible. So it's good for humanity to know about these things right now and not to be crying out for justice when they have now put themselves in such an impossible position.
Thank you for that, Brother Gregory. I'm just going to remind the listeners just one more time. You're listening to Blessed Radio. It's the Tuesday night spiritual discussion program. The aim of the show is to introduce you to the spiritual knowledge in the light of truth, the Grail message by Abdrushin. The topic we are discussing tonight is strengths and weaknesses. And you can join us in the discussion by contacting us on this UK number, which is 079 444 313 66. You can call, text or use WhatsApp. And if you're outside of UK, it is 0044 79 444 313 66. Again, you can call, text or use WhatsApp. I'm going to go to you, Brother Rainer. I'm going to look, this question is, well, we are very well aware in the world this is happening. Why has vanity become a great vice or weakness for so many? Because that's something you see young people, they want to be a star, and just it's not like a career or the path they want to follow like that, or something, in or be a farmer or whatever professions there are, but the desire is more, or the attraction is more for the being famous, more something like that. So how is this vanity come about, Brother Rainer?
Well, that's of course a huge motivation to be vain and conceited and to be admired, and those things are really, it's the intellect. I mean, to go back to the basics is always, we put the intellect above the spirit. The spirit recognizes and knows where real greatness is, and real greatness is not is not human admiration. The human world is out of line. It does not admire real greatness anymore, and it has set up, the intellect has set up its own idols, and that is it's egotistic in nature, and it's just to be admired, be applauded by other human beings, and yes, the course is like all other courses. It is the subduing the spirit under the intellect, always looking what the intellect says, and the intellect has to come up with such things as like the fashion beauty or the actor. Now, these are unrealistic desire, urges in the human being. They are urges in the tinsel world or plastic world. I heard this expression is really good. We have a kind of plastic Disneyland established, and the with lots of ideals, and the people want to be crazy things. The boys want to be, what do I know, famous terrorists and astronauts and things like this. And those desires, I think they are not realistic. It might be the case that you have a great gift for something, but that gift you will pursue also and will try to develop it also if human recognition and human applause is not guaranteed, or perhaps even might not take place at all. And there are many such professions. Today, it's really difficult to live. I think we were talking about the things about strengths and weaknesses, and some person might actually have the desire to become a choreographer or to become a dancer, famous dancer. And then there is one thing which is against it, at fulfilling it. That is, we must check in what kind of world we live, on how is human society now thought of encompassing the whole thing around the earth. We have an artistic decline. Artists are generally very poor, even if they are wonderfully gifted and create wonderful works. And it is very dangerous to embark on such a road when it is so terribly hard to do. Then to become an artist, a dancer has to train. I mean, this is just every day 12 hours. And that is to become a kind of dancer who has a chance of getting invited perhaps to the Royal Ballet. But there are thousands of dancers who train every day 12, 13 hours and six days a week, perhaps even 7 days a week. And there are so few places to do that. And today we must, I think, when we have such a great gift, I think we have a gift, we are in a very difficult situation to balance the two. In what kind of a world do I live? What chances do I have to get to a position where I can earn a living, a good living? And that is already in many artistic professions. It is very difficult to have a good living. Not talking about millions. And the kids, they see always the Michael Jacksons and what do I know, and Lady Gagas, who of course enthrall the millions, but they are the exceptions. If I go on such a way, I might end up in ruin, especially if I misjudge my own talents, my own strengths. And so I personally, I've seen many careers fail of people trying to set out on the artistic path. I've never dared to interfere because it could work out if they worked hard enough, if they are Michael Jackson. But the work behind those things, that it's really, again, what makes those people great, and it's the discipline which they pursue it, and what we talked before in that test, to go away from diversion and resist impulse gratification. Be strong, and I want to do this, and apply yourself to a task. I remember recently a film which I saw, a documentary about Michael Jackson, and one of the guys, Michael Jackson was just working on a dance routine, and the guy said, well, how long do you dance? I don't know why he asked that question. I think he wanted to stop. And 2 hours, 3 hours, and then Michael Jackson answered, until I cannot dance anymore. That means when he was on a dance routine, working on a dance routine, he was in his studio and was working till his feet gave in. So I don't know how many hours that were, but this is incredible. This strength, and that is real strength, the strength to persevere. Now, if we set out and want to be a glamorous person, we first must know, am I just after gratifying my vanity? I want to be applauded. Then you fail anyway. If you think you have a real gift in the artistic thing, then what you absolutely need is that willpower to force yourself to a daily routine of 15 hours and to pursue it, because excellence is so hard to achieve. And when we look at the very top, very often we see excellence, of course, often also other things, but when there's excellence, like in Michael Jackson, for example, I'm using those artists which are very known, or Stevie Wonder, but the same thing is with Jimi Hendrix. He was playing all the time. They were always asking the people, what is that guy there running around with his electric guitar up and down in the stairs in the party? He never took that thing out of his hand. Well, in the end, he was Jimi Hendrix, and very promising artist, and died too young, died of drugs, a very tragic thing. And what could we have had of him if he had lived 20 years longer? Unfortunately, he could not resist. He got engulfed in the drug scene at a very early age. I mean, he was famous when he was 24, 23, and died with 27. So, okay, so to conclude, I would say we must really find out, why do I want to do something? If you do it only for reasons of vanity, because you like the millions lying at your feet, then it's the wrong reason and you won't have the strength. And if you fail, it just serves you right. If you think you have a calling, then of course you can embark on it and say, okay, I'm trying it to do. If it fails, you definitely will be so good that you can always earn a living in that respect. But I think, yeah, we must be very clearly what are the motives out of which we do something. And it is much more important to get out of the plastic world, get out of the glitz and glamour world, and do those things which are the real things. If there is a talent in you, yes, then develop it. If it's a good talent, then there are many talents which are also into the normal activity spheres. There are only the artistic world and some other talents which are very dangerous to go into, because there's not humanity has declined, and people do not go into art galleries, people do not go into ballets, and people do not care about messages of a ballet, and there are many other reasons too. It's not only the people, also the people who provide entertainment. It is so politicized nowadays that it's not very enjoyable anymore. But yes, and the reason for all this is that we've put the intellect, we act according to what the intellect dictates, and he still wants to give us the semblance of a fulfilled life. We can only be really fulfilled if we do God's will, if we are completely in tune with our nature and the nature of the universe and follow those natural laws. That will give a very deep feeling, a very deep emotion, and it will even, if you follow that, you will even come to seeing God in creation, to seeing God in everything. That is the most powerful emotion. That is really awe. their emotion which sets in is called awe. And with that emotion, humility sets in. The complete contrary to what the vain person thinks. The vain person thinks always, oh, how great I am. Please clap your hands all around. And but the truly great person will come to recognition, and that recognition that God works behind everything, he will be overcome by a sense of awe, and awe will bring veneration of that great infinite majesty of God, the infinite power, the inexhaustible power he will feel pulsating behind the visible things, but he will see it, and the perfection, the infinite wisdom also working through everything. We will come to recognition of that wisdom, and then humility sets in, and that is really the right way to pursue greatness. Then this person is really great. And I wanted to quote something of Einstein. I don't know where I had it. A very wonderful quote of his in that sense. And I don't know where I have it. So I'm not trying to find it. 2 minutes to 9.
Okay.
But yes.
Do you know the gist of what he said? The gist of what he was saying?
Oh, no.
No?
I have to look where it is. I wouldn't like to.
You want to give the exact one? Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Maybe next week, if you just dig it out for that. So
but I think for the ending, how many minutes do we have? I think it's time
almost
to stop.
almost time now. Yes. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Brother Rainer. Yes, dear listeners, we've come to the end of our show tonight. I do believe we did lose the beginning of it at least on one website, blessedradio.org. Maybe tune in as well. So we do apologize for that. But you can listen to the recording of this tonight's show on YouTube. Go to youtube.com, search for Blessed Radio 1. Then I think the next thing is just to look for the title, Strengths and Weaknesses. That's the easiest thing. If you do that under the Blessed Radio 1, you should be able to find it. It's not broadcast until about 10 minutes after the end of tonight's show. So basically just wait 10 minutes and you can hear us there. I don't have a title for our next topic yet. I will have it hopefully, well, I will definitely have it by next week's show, obviously. So in the next few days we will have it. Brother Gregory, anything you'd like to say to the listeners to say goodbye?
Well, we wish them a good week.
Okay, thank you for that. And Brother Rainer, anything you'd like to tell the listeners?
Well, from me, a simple goodbye, and that actually means God be with you. That's goodbye, and what it means.
That's great. Thank you for that. I also wish everybody a great week. God bless. And just encourage you to pick up the Grail message in the light of truth by Pushin, and see the beauty and the great knowledge that helps us live really live a life which is fulfilling and worthy of praising God. So please have a look at that, and we'll be right back next week. Hopefully Brother Sayom is on his way. He's not here yet. I hope he's back in a few minutes. He'll be in a few minutes. Do join us next week, everyone. Tuesday, 6 p.m. to 8 p.m. UK time. All the best.